Look, I thought we had a good meeting this week all the way around. I thought your committee of the whole started at 4. Kind of harken back to the days of, dare I say it, Peter Varney, one of my favorite people in all the world, but he sure did like having an early committee of the whole meeting, and it kind of harkened back to that for starting at 4 o'clock. But I think that was good. We know that Jeff is leaving us, leaving us in his day-to-day capacity as city attorney. And so we had to make some decisions or go down a journey, and you were good to get ahead of that, smart to get ahead of that, really. No, we were laughing, but it's one of those things nobody really wants to make a decision on, but if we don't make an active decision, we're going to find ourselves in a hard place. So anyway, we did have to come in here and talk about that. And then I'll say we just meandered about the budget. I'll throw that out there to you. You were running that meeting, and by the way, I thought you worked really hard trying to keep everybody together. Well, congratulations. You made it through.
It's herding cats sometimes. And our budget's big and we have a lot of things in there. We touch everything. And, the big questions keep on coming up, talking about personnel and then talking about the affordable housing piece.
Right.
And just everyone's passionate about it. And I understand that. I think I would love to see the meetings go around where everybody speaks once before the next person speaks again. But,
right.
That's not always possible, but I think the big thing is if we can go, a lot of the concerns are talking about looking at the finances throughout the year, because the budget is just like you said before, roadmap, but it's not, it can change at any moment.
I've seen us change it every other week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, regardless of whether it's a city or if it's your business or my business,
you pivot.
Yeah, you have to pivot. So, getting that financial information in a timely manner, and you did a great job of listening to the entire council and putting some of that stuff together. And I don't know if you want to touch on any of that.
We'll come back to it. We have plenty of time to cover that.
But, I think if we can get that information and make the entire council comfortable, because, I've been asking for some of that stuff since before I was on city council. And so it's not just the current city manager, it's it's the past two from my recollection.
Right.
And I understand why it's a struggle to get the information, but
well, let's just talk about that then. I mean, you brought it up. I think it's incredibly important. I think it should be this simple, that whatever information is provided to the city council should be in such a format that John Q. Public can understand it. It's not trying to hide anything. And when the city council votes on it, they understand exactly what the vote was about. And I think that creates accountability. And I don't see anything wrong with that. And it's just simply showing the data. I mean, it shouldn't be any more complicated than that. And now what we choose to do, what council chooses to do may be different than what you would anticipate based on that data, but that's another conversation. That's my ward representative. Is that the individual I want there because they voted this way or that way? That's a different conversation. And so I've gotten very frustrated with it, and I think I've shared that with a lot of folks, and probably will become a little bit more vocal, and then maybe just let it go. But I think it should be as simple as understanding down to the granular of how you build up the budget. I mean, in my organization, and I have done this forever, you start with the very basic, right? What is your if it's a room board day, or if it's whatever your unit of revenue is, what is that unit of revenue? And what does that match to? Does it match to a widget? Does it match to a service? Does it match to whatever? What is the ratio of service units or widgets to people that I have in my organization for delivery or whatever the function is? And there's a correlation. There's a straight number on that. So what is that correlation? What is that ratio? And then how does that relate to what is going on in the marketplace? What can I hire that individual for? And that's usually based on skill or physical prowess, sometimes education, sometimes not, but it's based on something. And then the market then determines what that fair rate is. And so all I'm asking for is that. And then how do you build that up? Now, if it's in excess of, or if you are wearing 2 hats or 3 hats or 4 hats, give me a business case as to why I should deviate from that standard methodology that I think most people in the world use and recognize. And if it makes sense, then let's go down that road and try it. And that's okay too.
Right.
But it requires understanding it's like my English teacher used to tell me. He said, you can't break the rules of English until you actually know the rules of English. If you try to create effect, you can't create the effect unless you know and are practicing it in a real way. And the same is true for budget presentation as far as I'm concerned. And so, yeah, you've been asking for this. I mean, a lot of people have been asking for a lot of information that kind of populates around that, but doesn't really get to the core of it.
Right.
And I'm thinking that we should just do it. So, when we're having those smaller group discussions, I'll call it, the whole idea behind that was to be able to go through this line for line for line for line without boring folks and making sausage and doing it with different people and, council people and staff and just get a better understanding. And what happened was that really what I determined anyway, is that we were never going to get to a resolution on a line for line for line for line item. And so I think that we need to come up with a system in place that we're holding people accountable to, whatever that looks like. And in this case, I feel like it needs to be a monthly close, a month-end close. It's no different than I do in any business that I've ever been involved in, whether I've owned it or run it or been part of it or been the guy being yelled at. But, you
Right.
still have to be accountable to that. And then pivoting on a monthly basis, depending on what those numbers are showing you.
Right.
So,
And in addition to presenting that, we've always talked about,
Yeah.
and you've talked about a dashboard, and I think we need that up on our website to
Right.
where you can get to it, I can get to it, anyone can get to it, and I think that's vitally important.
and I think that's important. It's gotten kind of lost in this conversation. The manager and his team have agreed to participate in the benchmarking project that's done by the University of North Carolina School of Government, and it really benchmarks our key statistics with Wilson, with Greenville, Raleigh, Charlotte, wherever, so that we can look at what our costs are police per population or whatever statistic you want to know, and just make sure we're kind of in bounds, because when we had all those vacancies, our spend was pretty close to our neighbors, but the yield wasn't because of the vacancy rate.
Right.
And so now our spend is still consistent with our neighbors, but we've been able to fill those holes, and that changes a lot of those statistics, but you should be able to see that. That's my point.
Right.
Everybody should be able to see that.
Right. And actually, the UNC, you speak of UNC School of Government, and I'm not sure if it's a School of Government, but somewhere at Chapel Hill, they have, it's actually a dashboard that you're referring to about water rates and sewer rates.
Yep.
And if you pull it up now, it shows that Rocky Mount is woefully basically giving our water away.
Yeah, we are.
And we're the taxpayers and the citizens are losing money on the service.
Yeah.
Which
certainly opportunity cost.
Right. So we're certainly, and the rates are increasing on the water rates. I think it's going to be maybe another $1 or $2.
Well, and let's underscore that, because you just made a huge point. Our water's been so cheap that we're having to go up on the rates. So, I'm sure we're going to get some pushback on that, but we've basically provided it at cost. Is really what's happened. And now costs have gone up, so we're going to have to go up on the rate.
Right.
Well, I think folks need to hear that and have that sink in a little bit.
Right. But on the flip side, while we're talking about, a utility or service, our electric rate, we've been putting back, lack of a better term, a rainy day fund for our electric rate. And I think it's about a $15 million fund. Well, there's some mass increases going on in the world of electricity coming down from us through Duke.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's through, the pressures of going green and the expense of that from Duke having to go that route. Point I'm making is a lot of our neighbors and even Duke Energy is going up dramatically on their rates. Since we've been proactive and we're not going to have to go up on our rate. Now, if Duke keeps on passing down some of what they call a true up cost, that may change the story. But hopefully by 26, I think it's 26, we have another rate adjustment because another kind of payoff from selling our assets comes through. And so hopefully we'll be at a point to where we don't have to touch our electric rates. And I would go out on a limb saying we're probably in the lowest 5 municipalities or in the state of North Carolina for electric rates.
Yeah.
So we got some of the lowest in the state.
Well, and I want to underscore that too, because you just danced over that, but we've maintained this rainy day fund, and so we've consistently just held that back, and we're going to be able to cover our, big bill. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I mean, like our neighbor Wilson was $8 million, $9 million they had to pay in their true up.
Well, that was total. The 8 or 9 million was the total for all the Enkempa members, and we each have a portion of that.
Well, and we've got a smaller portion, but the point is we've set aside money,
right,
which means we don't have to go up on our rates,
right.
So we can maintain our rates consistent and constant where they are today, and withstand some of those, fluctuations in pricing.
Right. Because but right now there's going to be fluctuations because, while green is a great thing,
right,
it's going to cost, and it's going to cost a lot of money.
Well, there's a price for everything, right? So you've got to decide if that's a price you're willing to pay or not. Right. And, and talking about that, I mean, for instance, public safety, I keep going back to that. But I think most people are willing to go up on the tax if I get a return on it.
Sure.
If public safety gets me, if that's worth more, it's worth more to me, and I will pay that if that's an option, right? And fire protection, and and then there's some things I'm not willing to pay for,
right?
But that's what council's doing and putting together a budget, right?
Right. So, but yeah, and I think we determined that our rate, is going down from 685 down to 5.8, I think.
Yeah, that's what's proposed on the table today.
So essentially, we're going down 10 cents on the rate.
Sure.
And
the other thing that happened that I think was pretty significant on that, I mean, we already talked about the budget, is that we decided, each councilman had a number of things that they wanted for special projects. We tallied it up. And just carve that money out to the side and say, hey, look, let's allocate that. We'll call it 80% of it or 90%, whatever that number was. And then let's debate it as we go through the year and allocate it out based on when we have time to really work through the prioritization of those things. And we've never done it that way. And so I'm kind of excited to see it. I think that's going to be certainly a more, I hate the word transparent now because everybody's used it so many times, but it is a more transparent way. You'll see what the bucket of money is. You'll see what we're spending it on and what we're considered to be a prioritization. That was just new and different in the way we've done it in the past, and something I'm excited to kind of see what it may look like.
Right. And I'm excited for that. And I was not excited when we were adding stuff at Monday's meeting because I wanted more to think about it more. And so that's why I'm in favor of putting that, what Councilman Harris came up with, of putting in that bucket. And I appreciate him coming up with that.
I think it was a great idea. I mean, frankly, talk about the budget, I have several issues, several of the holes. But if we can put, parameters on how we're managing it midstream, then I'm less concerned about the budget and more about the day-to-day control of the budget than I am anything else. So, like housing, I mean, we've got $7-8 million out there. I think it's more than appropriate that we allocate those funds. They come from different buckets, but how is that going to be spent? We don't really have a roadmap yet, and that's a lot of money. Not saying there's anything right or wrong with that, but I just like to see a little more oversight and a little more direction before we start spending too much.
Right.
And what does that look like? So those are the kinds of questions that I think still remain, at least for me.
Right.
But boy, we got way off topic, didn't we?
Well, it all comes together.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I mean, it all plays a part. So, but essentially the budget was the topic of the whole community.
Yeah, it will be for the next one. And I'll be so glad when that daggone thing's been passed one way or the other. I mean, I almost don't care anymore. Yeah. That's not true. That's not true.
You do care. I know you do. Because you certainly played a big role in it. So, but then we went on to your meeting that you lead. And
I thought it went pretty well. I mean, normally we get a lot of folks, petitions from the public. And we got a fair number of this go around too, but I say that probably I shouldn't say it, but how about a lot of the discussion points were more germane to the meeting in the moment and felt like it was something that we could act upon, needed to hear about. In some cases it was news, in some cases not, but registered opinions, and I was excited to see that discourse, and and I think that I'm excited for it. I was excited to hear that. And, of course, Keith went through his community update, which, is really, I think it was more about Juneteenth starting Friday.
Right.
Juneteenth this Friday. And, I enjoy going to Juneteenth when I have gone. The challenge has been for me is this always Father's Day weekend, and we try to go somewhere else.
Right.
And so anyway, I'll be there Friday. I'll do the proclamation Friday night, and then maybe come back Sunday. I don't know, but we'll see how that works out.
Yeah. Since you mentioned that, I do think the city manager and his team did a great job. I'm sure many people received a postcard in the mail, and it talks about a lot of stuff going in Rocky Mount. It talks about Downtown Live, Lawn Chair Theater, Juneteenth, some of the stuff at the Imperial Center, even talks about July 4th.
Yep.
And if you haven't received it, I'm sure you can get a copy of it, but it's a great thing to keep everyone informed.
And on that point, I mean, City of Rocky Mount provides a lot of events for folks. I mean, you could stay in Rocky Mount and have a very enriched social life, appreciating the theater.
Right.
We have art exhibits. We have music location. I mean, from beach music to soul to whatever. And there's a lot going on. One of my issues has been that I don't think we've done a good job of necessarily advertising that for the world. And this, or maybe I'm just so daggone old that I don't know. I don't get how we're doing it now. That could be. I mean, seriously. But I think that was a great piece, and I think that folks ought to check out the website and see what's going on.
And they even have a thing about the visioning workshop in here about going on, and those workshops come up June 17th all the way to June 22nd. So I'm sure you can go on the website and look at that. But also Twin County.
I was going to say, put a little bit of a plug in there for Benton, because there's a lot of stuff that's not even mentioned, that's not sponsored by the city.
Right.
It's Twin County Live or Twin County TC. Gosh, sorry, TC. Ben. Sorry, brother. We'll get this,
Media.
Yeah, we'll get this right in the next meeting.
But he interviewed Emily Pinkston and the person from AACOM that's doing the visioning process. And I listened to it yesterday. They did a phenomenal job.
Well, yeah. Well, and you got the Dunn Center, their activities going on. There's stuff going. I mean, there's all over the place. Anyway, so there's a lot going on this summer. I'm excited for it. I was excited to see that fold, because I think that I don't have one, but I've seen yours and it looks great. So I don't know what they're saying. Maybe the mayor can't come, or
check your mail, Mayor. Check your mail.
Maybe that's probably what I need to be doing.
I'm sure you might have a bill or two in there.
Well, they all come electronically now. I can't avoid them like I used to. Can't say it was lost in the mail.
So, but we had the consent agenda, and one of the big items in there is we approved the extension of the contract with Malden and Jenkins to go over our yearly audit, and they're actually getting started here pretty soon. Yeah, because our year end's coming up the end of this month. That's why we're pushing for the budget, and some other.
That's important. That was best practices, and what was the best practice? I mean, rotate, was it every 3-4 years? I can't remember exactly, but
it's about 3 or 4 years. Yeah, you're right.
So this will be year 2, and I think that's good. I mean, the downside was it did delay the result of the CAFR, because they had to kind of learn new things. But that's part of why you switch them up, you know?
Because the previous one we had for 20 plus years.
Yeah, and look, and they did a great job. They did. They really did. I mean, it's just a best practices thing, right? A perception and optics thing, and it matters.
And then another big thing on the consent agenda was we approved $1.7 million, almost $1.8 million for the Booker T. Washington Gym renovation, which I think is much needed, and look forward to that being completed and serve the neighborhood and the city of Rocky Mount. So
that we got some life, bulletproof vest partnership grant. That was a big deal. We agreed to sell a lot of kilowatt hours to a firm, and that customer load approximately $5 million. So that's revenue coming in, and and some good stuff there. In that, but one that everybody can agree on. Right. Which is the point. Public hearings, we got rid of.
Postponed.
That's right. Sorry. Words do matter, don't they?
The words do matter.
We did postpone until July 8th, the July 8th meeting. Items, I believe it was
C, D, and E.
C, D, and E. Items A, Land Development Code, fence regulations got tabled. You want to speak to that?
Well, first of all, if you install a fence at your property, whether it's residential
Right.
or commercial, or if you put up a new fence or replace a fence, you have to have a permit.
Right.
So that's the first thing.
That's right.
Second,
Well, yes.
and there are many other permits that you have to have. Go to the city website, the homepage, it has permits, and you go straight there. I even pointed out to the city council, the mayor, in an email that even we, or those of us who are seeking office and buy those signs, got to have a permit for that too. And
It's just going to stir everywhere, aren't you?
but the fence permit, nothing really changed in it.
Right.
The big change in there was clarifying where, what we currently had in the code. And then it also added, and Ms. Pinkston did a great job of explaining that it just added materials that you can't use, such as tires and pallets and things of that nature. And that was the biggest thing, but we weren't changing anything except for really that. And then clarifying, the height of the fence.
I think really what came up there, really what I heard, and I think you even heard it from you, was like, I didn't know it was going to appear on the agenda until I read it just now, and maybe not had a little bit of background conversation on it, but that's the only thing I can think of. But you do have to have a permit for it. And quite frankly, I don't know anybody's ever built their own fence. Maybe there are people out there who've done it, but I'm calling somebody like Seegers or whomever to come build it for me, and I'm assuming they're getting the permits,
right?
Because they're not, I'm in trouble,
right? Ultimately, it's on the homeowner. I mean, it's just kind of like when you file your taxes, you might have a CPA that does it or someone else, but ultimately you're responsible for it.
Here's all I know: I bought the house I live in now, and I didn't put up a fence, but I got a fence all around my backyard. So I'm just assuming the guy who owned it before me had real, we'll call it neighbor relations. They all have fences, so
or an animal,
or an animal, or both. So anyway, the others were kind of put on hold. We did rezone that one piece of land on Gray Street, Gray Street, and I was kind of surprised it was on the way it was. I mean, when I saw the lot, I would have assumed it was already O&I, but anyway. And then that was it. We added a couple things at the end. I'm trying to work off memory here. We added, what did we add? About 4 things, if I recall. Obviously, they're so important that they're super top of mind awareness for us.
I've got it in my book bag back here, but I don't want it to take a little while to search through it. We did appoint some folks to boards and commissions.
We did, and I announced that I was able to fill out the housing authority. We did have 2 other members that were added. I think that was really good. The other thing was we were scheduled to have a joint meeting with the city council and the planning board relative to a rezoning request. That petition was withdrawn, so city council acknowledged that. So that meant we didn't have to have that joint session, although that was the regular scheduled planning board meeting date and time anyway. And so anyway, that was just, I guess, taken off the table for real consideration.
Right. But going back to the fence permit, speaking of planning board, I believe the planning board reviews all of those before it comes to us.
Okay.
So I could be wrong, but I vaguely remember reviewing some of those when I was on the planning board.
Right. Well, it makes sense. It really does make sense. If you don't want, there needs to be a standard. But, I think it really comes down to, and it really came up in both the committee of the whole meeting, a little bit also in the city council meeting as a whole, is code enforcement. And what does that look like and what does that mean? And one of the things I've been asserting for a while, and I don't know that people have looked at it from this perspective, and I keep trying to get folks to encourage to look at it. I mean, our population is roughly 54,000, almost 55,000 folks. Our housing stock is all occupied.
Right.
If it's habitable, it's occupied. I mean, our MLS has 147 houses in it. Last time I checked, a couple of weeks ago, the rental stock is at 95, 96% occupancy. So that means that we have no real stock.
Right.
So we can't grow until we build houses or take the deteriorating housing stock we have and rehab it.
Right.
And I don't know how to get that back into the game unless we are actively engaging in code enforcement. And that's something that I have heard from every community in the city of Rocky Mount. I mean, not just a Candlewood thing and not just a, South Rocky Mount thing. For every neighborhood, nobody wants that burned out house in their neighborhood. Nobody wants that boarded up property. They want to see it, either torn down and something new built, or get it fixed.
Right.
And I think there's a great opportunity there for somebody to do this when you've got that much pent up need, and we're the fourth fastest growing state in the country. We've got the wind in our back. This is a great opportunity to go forward and try to build some stock. And I'm seeing new stock come on board too.
Mm-hmm.
But then how do we get that to locate within the city of Rocky Mount becomes a question.
Right. Well, a lot of opportunity, and I think I agree with you on the code enforcement. I think many of us on the city council agree with you. And,
I think we all do. Everybody agrees with that conceptually, right? It's like everybody agrees with affordable housing conceptually, but what does that really mean to you? That's where that detail, I think, is where the discussion needs to be had. And look, we've all been busy. It's
right.
It's not like we get to sit around and have these conversations on what if. What do you think?
Well, we can certainly, for the code enforcement, start in Ward 5, and I'm willing to take some heat.
There you go. Well, we're going to leave on that note then. And look, I thought it was a very productive meeting. We did discuss panhandling. That was the other thing that we discussed in the meeting. And of course, that was the first reading. We'll hopefully have a vote on it in the next meeting. And so that's just something I've been receiving a lot of complaints on, and I think others have too. And so the solution is to just simply add a petition. Folks get a permit,
right,
and do a background check and know who they are. And I believe that will reduce a lot of the aggressive behavior.
Aggressive, and even today at lunch, I was riding down Sunset and had some children out there in the middle of the median, and that's just unsafe.
That's right. It is.
It's absolutely unsafe.
It is. And so we just need to enforce that. But anyway, so we'll leave on that note. That note we'll leave on. But thank you so much for being here, Lige. I really appreciate it. I'm glad to have you here in the saddle. I know you've been busy the last couple of months, and it's been great for you, and glad to have you back.
Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it.